Hi, I'm Jen Cushman. I'm a mixed media artist and the author of Explore, Create, Resonate, Mixed Media Techniques Using Ice Resin. So we just did a mixing of resin and we've let it sit for 5 minutes and rest for the bubbles to dissipate, and we are now going to pour a bezel. So here is our mixed ice resin. You can see that it's rested. It's all the bubbles, if you can get it close in, I don't know, but you can see that it's nice and clear. There's very few bubbles left. Whatever's in there will be completely taken care of and gone when we pour our bezel by the time we do that. So this is a mixed metal bezel that we have, and I'm actually going to take it and we are going to show how to make a resin bezel. This is vintage sheet music. I like to use that a lot. I think it's fun, and the easiest way to do this is to just go ahead and put your bezel down and just trace over there. It has these little bumpy hobnobs, so you're not going to have a perfect tracing, but you're going to cut inside of those anyway. So I'm going to put that aside, grab my scissors. I tend to just cut out my piece because it's easier to cut around than working with the whole sheet. Put the sheet aside. And then I'm just going to start trimming inside the circle to fit inside the bezel. Now this is a little bit of trial and error. You need to cut inside your circle and then you need to fit it, and then you'll go back and you'll just kind of make sure that you do it again. It's okay. A lot of people say, oh, I can't cut a straight circle, but you can do it. I know you can. You just keep whittling it down. And it's kind of like that kindergarten saying, a drop is a lot, but it's, you know, a little bit of cutting and cutting down and whittling it down is better than trying to overdo your bezel. So that's right about perfect. It's going to fit in there just fine. So we're going to show you how to put it in. Now, if you want your image to remain color fast, which means you want it to look exactly like this, you're going to first need to seal your image with either a wet medium like a Mod Podge or Collage Podge or gel medium, and you'll seal that. But I tend to not seal a lot of my background paper because resin loves paper and it wicks into the fibers and it creates a nice translucency here. So for this video, I'm not going to seal my image. I'm going to let my background my paper go translucent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to start putting a little bit of resin down on the back of the bezel. Let me scooch this out of the way. I'm creating a little bit of resin down here just because I'm not putting a drop of glue there. I'm just going ahead and put it in, but I want to make sure that the resin's there so when the paper seeps into it, when I put the paper on top of it, that it's got the resin underneath of it already for it to be ready to go in. So then I'll go ahead and put that in there, and I'll take my fingers and I just press it down. The reason why I'm pressing it down is that when you introduce anything into a bezel, you're bringing air into it, and that's what causes the bubbles. So ice resin is so crystal clear that you don't get the bubbles, but when you're embedding paper or embedding images, that's when you will get the bubbles that you will have to get out and pop out. So I'm going ahead and I'm just adding the resin on top of it. You can see the paper turning a real pretty shade right now because it's immediately with the vintage papers. The paper fibers of vintage, the fiber of vintage paper just loves the resin, and it's just going right in. And again, it's causing that look that I'm going for, which is kind of that aged and antique look. And you can see that it's just soaked right in there right away, and it's caused that beautiful translucency. So at this point, I can just keep filling it. If I want it to be a very simple bezel, I can leave it like that, or I can start adding things to it. One of the things I love to do is, because I'm a writer as well as a mixed media artist, I just add words to everything. I just love to add words. So I'm going to go ahead and add some words to this bezel. I'm actually cutting out, again, I'm going to cut out the name of this vintage sheet music. It's called Dancing Sprites. I think that's cute. And I'm going to cut this one off. And I'm going to do this. Now, because I want the words to pop out from the back of my translucent image here, I'm going to go ahead and seal these words to be color fast. Now, I can use Mod Podge and gel medium, or even some watered down white glue. You can even use a spray lacquer to put on it. You can use anything that's going to cause a barrier between the paper that's going to cause a nice barrier so the resin won't seep into the paper. A lot of my images are inkjet images, and when you have a wet ink from the inkjet and you put a wet medium on them, such as Mod Podge or gel medium, you will create smearing of your images. So if you are printing things from your inkjet, you might want to use this packing tape method. So what I do with here is I just take the clear packing tape and I pull it off, and then I cut it, and I create just a little art sandwich. I just take it and I fold it over, and I fold my packing tape onto itself. And make sure you burnish it down really well with your hands. And then when you cut around it, make sure you leave a tape-to-tape edge, because resin, again, like I said, resin loves paper. It will seep into it, and what's going to happen is you will end up having edges around here where the resin seeped into it, and it's not completely color fast. So you leave a tiny little seal, again, tape-to-tape seal. People worry that this is going to be seen in the resin, but honestly, it really isn't. It just goes into it perfectly. So, so I cut it here, and then I just kind of make sure my edges are nice and sealed. If you don't want to use packing tape and you are using images such as this, such as vintage paper, or you're using images that are printed in a laser printer, you can just use your gel medium, but make sure you work your gel medium really good into your edges so it doesn't go into there. So anyway, another little trick is when you're embedding, you will introduce those bubbles to your resin like I talked about, because you're introducing air into it. So if you take your resin and you take your image, whatever you have, and you just put the resin right on the back of the image, it's going to help create that little extra seal. The resin and the resin's going to meet each other. The resin of your embedding and the resin of this are going to just kind of meet in there, and it's going to suck together, and then you're not going to have the bubbles that you would normally have. So anyway, so then I have my word in there, and I'm adding some more resin on top of it. And again, you'll be able to see the seal, because you should see here right now that the background image has gone much more crystal, gone much more translucent, and the word here is staying exactly color fast. And that's the difference between sealing and not sealing. When you're adding this and you know you're going to embed, you want to just kind of be gentle with your resin. You want to add a little bit at a time, little drip by drip, fill it up about halfway, and then stop. And then we're going to add one more inclusion on it. So I have some vintage chain here, some rhinestones. I love putting rhinestones in our bezels and our resin because it creates just that little extra bling. And I'm going to embed that. This is a small enough inclusion that I'm not worried about putting the resin onto the back of it before I put it in. I'm just going to kind of put it in, take my craft stick, and just work it into the corners. So I'm creating just about a half bling here of my, and it will move around and it's fine. So I've got a little bit of bling there. And then I think the last thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of glitter just for a little bit more touch of my mixed media piece. And I'm just going to sparkle it in there. And now I'm going to go ahead and finish filling the bezel. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking my resin, my mixed ice resin, and I'm just going to start dripping it on. You'll see that the glitter will move around, and that's okay. You can take your glitter and you can just kind of work it into place. And then you just want to start filling it. It's self-doming, so it's going to create that beautiful bubble-like top on things. It just naturally creates the dome. And you just want to drip by drip. You want to take a look at it. One of the best ways to look at it is if you're wondering how high it's being filled, is you get down and you actually look at it from the table. You'll look at it from an eye level and put your eye down there, and then that's going to give you a view of what your dome is looking like. Make sure that you stop, because when you overfill bezels, if you overfill your resin, you have to just let it dry and then you have to do cleanup on it. So it's better to fill a little bit of resin and then go back and add more if you want a higher dome than it is to try to overfill in your very first pour. So that is it. That is filling and making and creating a resin pendant.